Everyone says India could become the next China someday. New factories are rising quickly, exports are growing steadily, and investors around the world are paying close attention. But replacing China is not the same as simply growing fast. China is not just a country anymore, it is an entire industrial system built over decades. So can India really replace China in the global economy anytime soon? Or are we asking the wrong question from the very beginning of the story? By the end of this video, the answer will become much clearer to you than it is right now. India is rising fast enough to change the direction of the global economy in the coming years, but China is still far stronger than most headlines and social media posts openly admit today. This battle is really about scale, logistics, and deeply connected global supply chains. India may win in some places and industries, but not in every part of the global game. And that is exactly what makes this story so fascinating and important to watch unfold. Let's start with why so many people around the world genuinely believe India can actually do it. First, India is now officially the world's most populous country on the planet today. That means a huge labor force and a massive and rapidly expanding consumer market. It also means decades of productive potential ahead if job creation can keep up with demand. India remains one of the fastest growing major economies anywhere on Earth. The World Bank recently projected growth around 6.6% for fiscal year 2027. That kind of sustained growth gets the attention of governments and investors everywhere. If you enjoy big global shifts explained in Lego, consider subscribing for more stories like this. And companies are no longer treating India like a distant future possibility. They are now treating it like a real and increasingly reliable manufacturing base. Smartphones are one of the clearest and most visible examples of that shift. Apple has been shifting more production for the US market directly into India. That is not just symbolism anymore. That is real supply chain change already happening. India's electronics industry has already grown at an impressive pace in recent years. It produced about $125 billion in the year ending in March 2025, and New Delhi wants that number to rise much higher in the coming decade. Government policy is pushing hard and consistently to make that transformation happen. Add geopolitics to the equation, and India suddenly looks even more attractive to investors. Many companies no longer want all their production concentrated in just one place, so India becomes the obvious and practical alternative in many strategic conversations. Better roads, modern ports, and faster logistics networks are adding even more to that momentum. And India is not just offering cheap labor anymore, it is building real industrial capability. At this point, the case for India looks incredibly strong to many observers around the world. In fact, it almost sounds like the next China is already beginning to appear. But then we hit the real problem that many people still underestimate. China is still unbelievably hard to replace in real-world practice, because China is not just manufacturing more products than others today. China manufactures inside a dense, deeply connected industrial ecosystem built over decades. Suppliers sit closer together, move faster, and coordinate far more efficiently than in most other countries. Its ports are enormous in scale. Its logistics networks are mature and highly reliable under pressure. Its transport system is built specifically for industrial speed and long-term consistency across vast distances. And its manufacturing depth goes from simple goods all the way to advanced technology and complex machinery. The size gap between the two countries is still huge even today. World Bank data shows China's manufacturing base remains vastly larger than India's by almost every measure. And the trade numbers clearly prove China is still performing at immense scale year after year. In 2025, China recorded a trade surplus close to $1.2 trillion. That is not a country quietly fading away from the global stage. That is a country still dominating global trade flows every single day across multiple industries. Even under political pressure and rising tensions, Chinese factories keep delivering scale and speed. That matters because efficiency compounds across every stage of production over time. When one country can make, source, package, and ship faster and more reliably, it usually wins. And China still sits near the center of many global supply chains worldwide. So yes, businesses everywhere want credible alternatives to reduce risk, but wanting alternatives is not the same as finding a full replacement that works at scale. Even logistics performance still favors China over India overall. In the World Bank's 2023 Logistics Index, China ranked noticeably ahead of India in infrastructure and reliability. Suddenly, the story feels much less simple than it sounded before. India is rising fast. China is still standing much higher for now in most key industries. And now we get to the hidden contradiction that many people still overlook. India is growing partly by importing what China already makes at massive industrial scale. Components, machinery, electronics, and industrial inputs still flow heavily from China every single day. So in many cases, India is assembling more finished products than it is fully replacing production capacity. That distinction matters far more than most people realize at first glance, because dependence shows up very clearly in the hard trade data. India's trade deficit with China reached a record $99.2 billion recently. Much of that widening gap came from electronics, machinery, and other critical industrial goods. In other words, India still needs China in order to scale faster and stay competitive in global markets. It's hard to replace the factory when you still import the most critical parts needed to run production. That is why India is now trying to move deeper into the supply chain over time, not just final assembly, but key components and intermediate goods as well. That includes semiconductors and more advanced industrial inputs that support modern manufacturing. Even rare earth magnet production is now part of that long-term national strategy. The goal is simple: reduce import dependence and build stronger long-term resilience. But building a complete supply chain takes many years of investment, coordination, and patience, not headlines. It requires suppliers, transport systems, financing, skilled workers, and deep industrial trust. And global companies still care about reliability and stability above almost everything else when choosing where to produce. So the rivalry between these two countries is real, but the interdependence is real too. That makes this competition far more complicated than many people first assume. Do you think India can replace China completely, or only challenge it over time in certain industries? Comment below, because now we can finally ask the sharper and more realistic question. Not whether India can replace China entirely, but where India can realistically take China's place in the global system over the next decade. And this is exactly where the real answer finally begins to emerge more clearly. India can absolutely take meaningful share in selected sectors of global manufacturing over time. Smartphones and electronics are still the clearest and most visible examples today. Labor-intensive manufacturing can also grow much faster than in the past, especially when companies want diversification, not a risky and expensive total relocation. Because the world is not choosing just one single replacement country anymore. It's building several alternatives at the same time across different regions of the world. China still leads where scale and ecosystem depth matter the most. That includes industries requiring dense supplier networks and many years of industrial maturity. India doesn't need the whole pie to become a true global manufacturing giant. Even a partial shift would still transform global trade in a powerful and lasting way. It would reshape how companies source materials, invest capital, and manage long-term strategic risk. So maybe India is not becoming the next China after all. Maybe it's becoming something fundamentally different instead. A second massive manufacturing pole rising steadily in Asia over the coming years. Not a replacement of China, but a gradual rebalancing of the global industrial system. And that may be even more important than a simple replacement story people often imagine. So, can India replace China completely? Not entirely, and certainly not soon. But it may become the most important challenger China has ever faced. And this shift could reshape the entire global economy in ways we are only beginning to understand. If you want the next big power story, watch the next video now. That next episode connects directly to everything you just saw. Click there, and I'll see you in the next one very soon.